Ryan Matthews had always believed that real wealth meant building doors where the world insisted on placing walls. But that morning, standing before a line of mothers waiting for a single plate of rice, something inside him shifted. It wasn't their failure. It was a system repeating the same wound through generations. Helen Dawson was in that line, holding her son David's hand like a thin thread of dignity. Ryan watched them and felt the weight of being a billionaire in a world where a child still had to learn hunger before hope. He didn't want to donate. He wanted to erase the root of the problem. Then an idea hit him like a silent shockwave. Not a charity program, not a massive check, but a definitive system capable of ensuring no mother would ever choose which child eats that day. Ryan realized he could try something impossible. Or finally, something necessary. But when Ryan presented his idea to the government, he realized ending poverty wasn't the real threat. The real threat was confronting those who profited from chaos and desperation. And some of them had no intention of letting him go any further. Ryan left the meeting with Secretary Paul Andrews feeling as though he had stepped into a corridor where every door led back to the same place. His proposal, in his mind, was clean and efficient. A global, self-sustaining system that used technology to dismantle hunger at its structural roots. But to the government, simple meant dangerous. Simple meant change. He walked toward the car with slow, heavy steps, replaying Helen and David's faces in his mind. The exhaustion in their posture told a story the secretary would never see. Hunger wasn't only a lack of food, it was a lack of control, a lack of tomorrow. It was learning early in life that the world decides for you. And Ryan couldn't ignore that anymore. Inside the car, his folder slipped open, papers scattering like shards of an abandoned future. He stared at them, feeling the sting of rejection. The government didn't want solutions. It wanted predictability. Managing poverty kept certain wheels turning. Solving it would halt them. That truth landed like a weight across his chest. As the car merged into traffic, Ryan watched as street vendors were chased by inspectors. It was a ritual of survival. They weren't criminals. They were parents, workers, dreamers forced into corners because corners were all they had. Their desperation mirrored Helen's, and that memory pushed him deeper into conviction. Arriving at his company, he didn't head for the executive floor. He went straight to the innovation lab, where screens glowed like constellations. Clara, his research director, glanced at him and immediately sensed the trouble. When he explained the meeting, she listened in silence, absorbing not only his words, but the undercurrent beneath them. Clara's response was calm, but sharp. The government wasn't the real obstacle. The real threat was the network of groups profiting from structural failure. Ending poverty wasn't a threat to politics. It was a threat to business, to influence, to hidden economies built on despair. Ryan felt a cold certainty tighten inside him. That night, the city lights outside his apartment looked different, colder. He stood at the window, thinking of families going to bed hungry. Hunger taught children to shrink their dreams before they even had names. He couldn't shake the image of David's thin fingers holding Helen's hand. That small gesture felt like a quiet plea. He sat on his couch, opened his laptop, and rebuilt the project from scratch. He redesigned charts, redistributed energy models, mapped logistics. Hunger had a pattern, and patterns could be dismantled. If he could create a system that bypassed political bottlenecks, then he could build something no one could shut down. Hours passed. The sky shifted from night to a gray dawn. Ryan's eyes were tired, his back sore, but his determination felt sharper than ever. The new version of the project wasn't just a model. It was a blueprint of a different world. And for the first time, he sensed a spark of possibility, fragile but real. At 6:30, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. No greeting, no signature. Just a warning. You're stepping where you shouldn't. Ryan froze for a moment, feeling the whisper of danger crawl along his spine. Someone knew he was still working. Someone was watching. But fear was fuel. He drove back to Helen's neighborhood that afternoon, wanting to see the truth again. The neighborhood was quiet, but heavy. Helen was washing clothes in a plastic basin, her sleeves rolled up, her posture steady. When she saw Ryan, her eyes widened, not in fear, but disbelief that he returned. He told her he needed to understand more about her world. She hesitated at first, but slowly began opening parts of her life he couldn't find in any report. Rising prices, unpredictable work, nights where she skipped meals so David wouldn't, systems that existed only on paper, promises that dissolved after elections. David played nearby with a half-flat ball, glancing at Ryan with shy curiosity. When he approached and asked if Ryan knew how to fix a ball, Ryan smiled. He didn't, but he was trying to fix something far bigger, something that mattered infinitely more. Returning to his office, he integrated everything he learned into the system. The RAISE model needed cultural flexibility, climate adaptability, decentralized production, and community autonomy. It wasn't enough to deliver food. The neighborhood had to produce it, own it, control it. Only then could the cycle break. Clara reviewed the updated model and widened her eyes. It wasn't a project anymore. It was an ecosystem, a living structure, something capable of sustaining itself even if the world around it resisted. Ryan felt both pride and fear. Anything powerful enough to help was powerful enough to provoke enemies. Days later, men in dark cars appeared near his building. They didn't approach. They just watched. A presence without identity, which was far worse. Ryan realized this wasn't a warning anymore. It was surveillance, the kind you didn't shake off easily. He returned to Helen's neighborhood, finding her worried. Strangers had been asking about him. They didn't show badges. They didn't give names. The community felt the tension like static in the air. Ryan promised to protect her and David, though he didn't yet know how. Leaving the neighborhood, he looked back. David waved at him, a small, hesitant wave. But it hit Ryan like a vow. That simple gesture was enough to make every risk worth it. Enough to turn fear into purpose. Enough to push him forward into a fight he didn't fully understand yet. If this chapter moved you, keep following to see what happens next. In the days that followed, Ryan worked in complete silence. No press releases, no meetings, no leaked documents. Only focus. The warning message he'd received no longer felt vague. It carried weight, like a quiet hand pressing against his back. But instead of stopping him, it sharpened his resolve. The RAISE project needed to be rebuilt, stronger, deeper, untouchable. Clara joined him in the late hours, sleeping on the office couch and waking to screens glowing with simulations. Every new version revealed the same truth. The world didn't lack resources. It lacked management and willingness. Hunger wasn't a natural condition. It was a logistical failure, one that could be corrected if someone dared to face the cost. To refine the model, Ryan needed real-world input from communities, not statistics, real conditions. He returned to Helen's neighborhood quietly, without a driver or security detail. When he found her, she was organizing donated clothes in a plastic bin. She looked surprised to see him again, but didn't step away. Trust wasn't there yet, but curiosity was. Helen explained the invisible math of hunger. Good days, bad days, days where prices rose overnight, days where meals shrank without explanation. She talked about neighbors sharing scraps, single mothers juggling 2 jobs to maintain scraps of stability. Ryan listened as if hearing the world recalibrate. Her words shifted the project from theory to necessity. Nearby, David chased a worn-out ball through the dust. He watched Ryan with careful interest, measuring him. When he edged closer, he asked if Ryan knew how to fix a ball. Ryan laughed softly, admitting he didn't, but promised he was trying to fix something else, something bigger. The boy nodded, as though he understood without understanding. Back at the company, Ryan integrated everything he observed. Cultural needs, supply fluctuations, transportation instability, energy gaps. The system had to survive politics, corruption, and sabotage. It needed redundancy, resilience, and autonomy. It needed to function like nature, adaptable, self-correcting, impossible to kill. Clara reviewed the updated blueprint and slowly whispered that this wasn't a project anymore. It was an organism, something that could outlive any government, something that could threaten those who depended on poverty staying intact. Ryan felt the chill of that realization, but also the fire that came with knowing he was on the right path. A few mornings later, his security team reported strange activity around his building. Unmarked cars slowing near entrances, men photographing exits, unknown drones hovering above private windows. The threat had grown teeth. Whoever was watching wasn't just curious. They were preparing, observing, calculating weaknesses. Ryan didn't back down. Instead, he prepared a quiet announcement, a private global initiative named RAISE, open to governments but not controlled by them. A system meant to neutralize hunger at its core. Journalists seemed confused. Some mocked it, calling it idealistic. Others dismissed it as branding. No one understood the depth behind it. Hours later, Secretary Paul Andrews demanded an urgent meeting. They met at a public garden, where cameras and crowds created protection. Paul spoke with forced friendliness, urging Ryan to reconsider the project. Not because it was flawed, but because it was disruptive, dangerous, threatening. His words were heavy with unsaid truths. Ryan walked away knowing the message behind the message. The resistance wasn't political, it was economic. Entire industries fed on disaster, and Rays would starve them. That clarity hit him like a hard stone. But it didn't slow him, it focused him. If the system scared the wrong people, it meant it was powerful enough to matter. That evening, he received a sudden text from Helen. "We need to talk." He drove to the neighborhood immediately. She told him men had been asking about him quietly, aggressively, without identification. The entire neighborhood felt unsafe. But instead of asking him to stop, she looked him straight in the eyes and told him not to give up. Her courage struck him deeply. He realized she wasn't afraid of change. She was afraid of change disappearing. He promised her he wouldn't back down. David stood close to his mother, watching Ryan with a mixture of worry and hope. The boy didn't speak, but his silence carried the weight of a future waiting to be rewritten. Returning to his office, Ryan assembled his core team. He explained that Rays needed a real-world pilot, somewhere small but meaningful, a place that could hold the first seed. The team hesitated, fearing political consequences. But Ryan knew exactly where the pilot needed to be. He could already picture it clearly. Helen's neighborhood. Clara questioned the safety of this choice. Ryan admitted it wouldn't be safe, but it was right. And sometimes what is right demands risk. His team slowly agreed. They believed in him, even when fear lingered beneath their confidence. Innovation wasn't born from safety. It was born from necessity. Over the next week, discrete containers arrived in the neighborhood. No logos. No public announcements. Inside were solar panels, automated agricultural units, water filtration devices, and digital access hubs. Residents gathered to watch, whispering about what was coming. Curiosity replaced dread. Anticipation replaced fatigue. Helen watched everything with cautious awe. She didn't fully understand the technology, but she recognized intention. She recognized effort. She recognized that someone with power was choosing her community for something other than votes or charity. The quiet dignity in her posture reminded Ryan exactly why this mattered. Finally, the first microhub powered on. A gentle hum filled the air as lights flickered to life across the neighborhood. Children ran toward the glow, eyes wide. Families stepped out of their homes, as if witnessing something sacred. It wasn't just electricity. It was a sign, a possibility, a doorway to a future they had never been allowed to imagine. And standing there, watching the neighborhood light up, Ryan realized the fight had only begun, but so had the transformation. If this chapter gave you hope, don't miss what comes next. In the first days after the microhub activated, Helen's neighborhood felt like it had taken its first full breath in years. People walked slower, not out of exhaustion, but curiosity. Lights glowed where darkness had always ruled. The fear wasn't gone, but it shared space with something new, something fragile but powerful. Hope. Food production modules began, operating quietly behind community buildings. Fresh vegetables, grains, and fruits circulated, without long lines or humiliating exchanges. Mothers approached the distribution points carefully, unsure if they truly belonged there. But the system didn't ask questions. It simply delivered. Dignity didn't need paperwork. Helen downloaded the Raise app reluctantly. She expected complications, bureaucracy, endless forms. But instead, there were simple options, clear steps, and real-time updates. David peeked over her shoulder, fascinated. When they later received their first basket of fresh food, Helen stared at it for a long moment, as if trying to understand what had changed. As days passed, more systems came online. Solar panels lit alleys that had always been dark. Water filters turned murky taps into reliable fountains. Shared kitchens became places for conversations, not struggles. Children who once played in dust now gathered around digital learning screens. The neighborhood didn't just look different, it behaved differently. But the transformation also drew attention. Ryan noticed cars circling the area more frequently. Black windows, slow movement, intentional routes. Clara reported unusual spikes in cyberattacks against the Rays servers, attempts to corrupt data and erase backups. These weren't amateurs. These were professionals trying to kill an idea. Clara activated deeper security layers, isolating potential vulnerabilities. They created mirror servers across multiple continents. Rays had become too important to be stopped by a keyboard in a dark room. Ryan realized the project was no longer his. It had grown beyond one man. That made it resilient and dangerous to those who thrived on weakness. Meanwhile, tension in the neighborhood rose. Whispers spread about strangers, asking questions and watching people. Fear returned in small waves. Not of hunger this time, but of interruption. Communities learned quickly that good things often come with an expiration date. They feared losing what had barely begun. Ryan gathered the community in the central courtyard, where new lights cast a warm glow over everyone's faces. He explained that Rays was protected across the world, that the system could not be shut down by a single attack or a single order. People nodded slowly, absorbing his confidence, even if they didn't grasp the technical depth behind it. Then Helen stood. She spoke quietly but firmly, saying she had never seen anything so real, not a promise, not a speech, but a change she could hold in her hands. She said that for the first time, she believed her son might grow without knowing hunger. Her words wrapped the crowd in a shared truth. Ryan felt a heaviness in his chest. The next morning, Secretary Andrews called Ryan, with an edge in his voice. He warned that powerful groups were discussing containment strategies. Not lawsuits. Not political pressure. Strategies. Ryan could hear the stress behind the carefully controlled tone. This was no longer theory. Rays was disrupting global interests. That night, a shipping container holding advanced equipment was found vandalized. Screens shattered. Cables torn apart. Panels smashed. No one was hurt, but the message was unmistakable. They weren't attacking the neighborhood yet. They were attacking the future, hoping to stop it before it spread. Ryan had expected resistance, but not this quickly. Clara argued they should pause, rebuild, wait, but Ryan shook his head. If they paused now, the fear would win. Hope needed momentum, not caution. He ordered new equipment, reinforced security, and doubled surveillance. And something unexpected happened. The neighborhood volunteered to help guard the installations. They weren't just recipients anymore. They were protectors. News of the neighborhood's transformation leaked online. A single drone video showing children running under solar lights went viral. Within days, representatives from countries struggling with hunger contacted Ryan, requesting access to the Rays model. The world wanted answers. And answers were now growing in a single forgotten neighborhood. The increased visibility forced their enemies into the shadows. Nobody wanted to attack something the public had begun to admire. Transparency became their shield. Ryan understood something vital. The more people knew, the safer the idea became. Rays wasn't just a system. It was becoming a global expectation. One evening, Helen experienced a moment she never imagined. David refused a second serving of food, saying he was already full. She froze, staring at him. For a child who had grown up stretching every meal, fullness was not a physical stat, it was a miracle. She felt tears burn her eyes. Not from sadness, but release. When Ryan visited the neighborhood again, he found life where he once found survival. Kids played under streetlights. Families cooked together in shared kitchens. People discussed planning, not desperation. He walked slowly, taking it all in, knowing the seed had not just grown, it had rooted itself. David ran toward him with a grin that Ryan hadn't seen before. A real one, pure, unburdened. Ryan lifted him, feeling the light weight of a future finally allowed to exist. Helen watched them with eyes full of a gratitude that didn't need words. Ryan realized he hadn't ended poverty, not yet. But he had broken its illusion of permanence. And once the world sees poverty can be dismantled, it can no longer pretend it's impossible. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who still believes change can't happen. Weeks later, Ryan returned to the neighborhood, not as a billionaire, but as someone who needed to see what had grown from a single idea. The streets felt warmer, more alive. People greeted each other with a confidence he hadn't seen before. Where there had once been silence, there was laughter. Where there had been fear, there was direction. He found Helen standing near the microhub, watching David help a group of kids learn how to operate the panels. The boy looked stronger, taller, as though nourishment had unlocked a version of him that had been waiting quietly. Helen didn't say much. She didn't need to. The quiet pride in her face spoke louder than any thank you. When Ryan walked toward his car, he understood what had changed inside him. It wasn't victory or satisfaction. It was responsibility. Ending global poverty wouldn't happen overnight, and it wouldn't happen because of one person. But movements always begin with someone refusing to accept the world as it is. He had simply chosen to be that someone. As Rays expanded to new regions, researchers, leaders, and communities reached out for guidance. The system was evolving beyond his original vision, becoming a living structure shaped by the people who used it. Ryan watched it grow with humility. True wealth, he realized, wasn't measured in money or power, but in the courage to reshape what everyone else calls inevitable. And somewhere between the lights of that neighborhood and the future that awaited it, Ryan found a lesson he would carry forever. Hunger wasn't destiny, poverty wasn't natural, and dignity wasn't a privilege. If even one community could rise, the world could no longer sit still. Hope, once planted, demanded to be multiplied. If this ending touched you, share the lesson you'll carry with you.